Here goes your intro.
Welcome to M2Techcast, a live internet radio show offering the latest news and interviews with the people driving business, technology, and politics in Michigan. Now, your hosts, Matt Roush and Mike Brennan.
Hey, it's Matt Roush.
And Mike Brennan.
And we are back with the August 31st, 2020 edition of the M2Techcast, mitechnews.tv.
Yeah, normally we'd be looking forward to the Labor Day weekend and we'd be gathering with family and friends and doing, celebrating the end of summer. I don't think that's going to be happening this weekend, but at the same time, we'll make the best of what we got, right? So
Right.
one of the real key issues right now and going forward is whether or not we get a vaccine for COVID-19, because until that happens, doing the fun Labor Day stuff with family and friends is probably not going to happen, right, Fred Brown?
It's going to be, it could happen, but it'll be risky, especially for some people who are particularly susceptible. That's right. And
so,
of course, it'll blow up.
Yeah, so we were just talking before we started, and the FDA is now saying that they're going to, fast track the vaccine, maybe not even wait till the end of the clinical trials, which, according to you, is not typically done, right?
This is a very interesting period. Hi, Dave. Good to see you. It's a very interesting period for vaccine development, and a few of us got together, especially after the emergency use authorization that was recently given for first lab tests, clinical lab developed tests, and second, and just very recently for convalescent plasma. I have some slides and some thoughts that I thought you might be interested in, and be interested in everyone's feedback, because I have to give a large presentation on some of this on Wednesday. So let's see if, that's the wrong one. I apologize. I got the wrong version up.
Well, we're happy to give folks a sneak peek at your presentation. Thank you.
No extra charge.
No extra charge. Yeah. So this is, let me just show you quickly. We have, I'll go through this fast, and then you guys can sort of get a sense of it. So let me put it on slideshow. So basically, we've got what looks like in the future to be drug cocktails, and you can see that they're basically three big areas that we're working on. One is antivirals, and we have remdesivir already, as you know. It's for late stage people who are trying to reduce their stay in the hospital from 14 to 10 days, basically. It has no mortality improvement. So we have to add more virals to this to create a real cocktail that'll actually do something for us to reduce mortality, which we're ultimately interested in. Then we have a whole set of antibodies, and you heard about the convalescent plasma. So if you look at mortality improvement, it's up to 3%, and I say up to because we really didn't do the proper trials in this case. We did open label trials, which really can't discern whether whether giving this convalescent plasma is better than nothing. But from our experiences with Ebola and other viruses, we think it's probably possible that it has some mortality improvement. And so we think that overall, you'll see in that column, therapeutic impact versus cure, we've got about a 2% overall improvement. And then we have the immunomodulators with dexamethasone really being a star here. But overall, when you add all these cocktails together, we think we're having an impact on therapeutically on COVID to date of about 5%. And you add that then to other clinical methods, care pathways, off-label, prescribed pharmaceuticals to date. And we're likely still under 20% overall improvement. But when you consider the fact that this disease has only been with us for 8 months, that's pretty good. And of course, this doesn't disclude the opportunity that we may actually have some blockbusters in the future. So the big question that we had as epidemiologists, virologists, and I do a lot of work in drug development, and I'm working with one of these with one of these companies, so I got to be a little bit careful about what I say. But our big question is, what about this? What about this emergency use authorization? What could that look like? So right now, the administrators started warp speed vaccine timelines. Originally, we were hoping, and most of us developers are hoping that we would do what they call a solidarity trial, the WHO solidarity trial. This is a trial that uses a master protocol and then compares all of the drugs with the same set of protocols, methods, and so on. And it randomizes the drug and the people who are getting the drug and the investigators with placebos, and then compares all the different drug responses. And this is for vaccines. It's particularly effective in looking at trying to compare drugs. And right now we have 176 different vaccines, and it's going to be hard to know which one's better or worse, especially those that are being created by big companies versus some of the more innovative small companies. So we've got in warp speed, the 4 big companies that have capacity and capability got together and they did deals with the United States government. And right now, if you look at traditional ways, if you look at traditional vaccine development, it takes 10.7 years and the chance of getting on the market is about 6.7%. That's average development since we started working with vaccines, modern vaccines in the 1900s. So this development, of course, has been done in 8 months. And we are already at phase 3 clinical trials, which normally you don't enter until at least year 5, 6, 7 of an average trial. 5 was quick, fastest we ever did it was kind of year 2, 3 for mumps. And that was a real fast trial. But you can see we're already we're already looking at Moderna, who has started on July 11th. They have 30,000 doses planned, and this goes to this is a 2-dose test, and then they have an evaluation, FDA submission, review, and licensure. Probably be ready in July. Well, we could accelerate that maybe to June on a traditional FDA kind of approval process. Pfizer, 30,000, and again, 30,000 is sort of the minimum you want in a trial like this. For a variety of reasons, the statistics work out that you can just barely sort of get to a point of population understanding at 30,000 doses. And you can see J&J decided to do 60,000 doses because they were concerned it wasn't quite enough dose. Pfizer is doing a 30,000 dose. It takes 2 doses. They do it, and you can get a sense of their timeline, very similar to Moderna. They're about 2 weeks behind, but I think they'll catch up with their FDA review and licensure and FDA submission because they have more capability and they already have manufacturing capacity scale. J&J only needs 1 dose. So even though they're going to start September 5th, they're actually going to be done about the same time again that Moderna and Pfizer is. And finally, AstraZeneca also only has 1 dose. They're planning a 30,000 trial. So you can get a sense of what's going on here. You're starting to get a lot of trials that are going to be completed right around November. And if you think about where we are going to be in November, we're going to be right at election time. And if you work this all out, I think we could actually have so Moderna will have adverse events reports in September and October. They're already planning that. That's pretty easy to do. You basically look at adverse events, you look at signals, and these are what they call event-based trials. So you accrete the studies over time. November 1st, 57 days post the first jab. So you could actually have infection level data and adverse event level data, at least in raw form, on November 1st. Now, usually you go through evaluations. It takes 14 days, and you have to, and that's an absolute minimum. So right around November 1st, literally, is the day you'll be done with 14-day evaluation and have data on that. The Pfizer would be ready on November 20th or so, if everything goes perfectly, but the difference between Pfizer study and Moderna study is they're actually looking at cohort set analyses. So they're actually taking 500 and 500 and 500 and closing and 500 and closing. So you can imagine them putting together 12 cohort studies and they're planning to have on October 5th, they're planning to have the adverse events data and about 6,000 patients of cohort data. That'll be 12 rounds. On October 5th, which would give them enough time to sort of evaluate that cohort by November 1st again and be ready. J&J is interesting because they're doing 60,000 studies, but they only have one dose, so they don't have that 29-day wait period that the other two do. So they actually catch up and could actually, because they have so much capacity and capability in this space, could actually beat Moderna and Pfizer. They also are using global sites, and if you think about, what we're doing here in the United States is we probably will not allow what they call challenge testing, which means that you give the person the drug and then you wait for, and then you actually expose them to the virus. But you can imagine that there are countries and patients, subjects who might want to get paid a lot and take that risk, especially if they're young. And so you see a lot of sites, over half the sites I think for J&J are actually in Brazil, which is sort of interesting. So they could actually, get evaluated results around November 1st as well for 30,000 people. And AstraZeneca is saying that they're not going to be ready until end of December, but they're going to drag along. They do a phase 1, 2, and 3 trial process, which means you're going to drag along 600 patients from phase 1, 2, 3 that you have some experience with to add to their trials, and they could be ready in early to mid-November with an interim data, and that's what they're sort of looking at like on their website. So when you look at all that, if you have 50% effectiveness and you're able to see the separation between your two, those who have had the test and those who have not had the vaccine, those who've had a placebo versus those who are injected with the real drug. And if you wanted to get up to 7,500 patients evaluated, and if the phase 1/2 data holds phase 1/2 data holds in terms of the level of durability of the titers, and you have a 10% incidence level, you could actually get to 7,500 people and show some separation between the two study groups. And at that point, if you show safety, the EUA, really raw guidelines are, this is for things that have been demonstrated to be safe that we're wondering about our effectiveness is. And that's really designed for tests and drugs that are out there that you want to try on somebody else and they're pretty safe. It's not really designed for vaccines, but there's an awful lot, if you look at this timing, of pressure that's going to be imposed on the politicians and on the scientists at this point. You can imagine it kind of as you approach November 1st. What's interesting about this is that, of course, a lot of people will have voted already in mail. So a lot of them won't have the information about how the vaccine is doing at the end of October. So there's an extra sort of twist on this. So here's what's going to happen if you overlay this with what's happening with what we're projecting for most likely to happen with the disease prevalence. You see that basically we think that in almost all the models are showing we're going to have a slow sort of plateauing through October, but then toward the end of October, kind of Halloween, and especially by Thanksgiving, we will be in a rapid phase of escalation because everyone's going to be moving indoors, and in the fall, we'll have a little bit of downward trend in the south, but we think, and if you look at the projections, most of the projections are up at 6,000 to 7,000, about 6,000 deaths a day in December 1st. If you look at the IHME data, if you look at Columbia data, if you look at Texas data, if you look at Los Alamos data, that's all what they're projecting. And my models also are projecting that. And I can, you can argue about the use of masks, and that would reduce the death rate by about half, but not much more than that. So you can get a sense of, how much pressure is going to be happening right around Election Day. And then, of course, we move into a lame duck session when, just as this whole escalation of disease state is occurring. And there's just going to be an awful lot of pressure, I think, to put the emergency use authorization into this environment. I'm not forecasting this, but you can get a sense of just of this in this scenario of just how difficult this is, especially because, you know, when you do all the math and look at the capacity of the hospitals in the United States, once you get to 7,000 to 9,000 deaths a day and project how many, you know, ill people are in the hospitals, that's at times 30 in the hospital, plus the addition of the flu, which is 200,000 more beds per month in the hospital, all of a sudden you get to a point where you have overwhelmed the hospital capacity. And at the point of overwhelming hospital capacity, that's when everybody, right now, you know, people aren't too worried about 1,000 deaths a day because you don't really see it. Everyone's being taken care for in the hospital. You don't have any overruns, particularly except in, you know, big burst areas. When you're up at 7,000 a day, you've got every hospital in the country running refrigerator trucks, and you've got ambulances stacked up outside. And people,
what was the peak death rate? Excuse me,
yes.
pardon me for interrupting, but what was the peak death rate during the initial real run-up of this thing, say back in April and May? What was the peak deaths per day in the country?
Just over 2,000, as I recall.
So this is 3 times that we're looking at?
Yeah, they're projecting, almost all the models are projecting a real rapid escalation right around Thanksgiving through Christmas and into the next year. Yeah, so it's and don't forget, our initial bursts were only in New York City, and we had some in Detroit, a little bit in Washington, and a little bit here and there. I'm talking about what happens is that unfortunately we're not controlling the virus, and so it's slowly building up. It's a momentum of steam, and we're getting to a point where these little bubbles of expansion, like we had, and breakout, like we had in New York, Detroit, in April, are going to actually come together across the whole country. That's the big risk, is that we get into exponential growth, not just in hot spots, but along, you know, in big enough regions of the country that, you know, we overwhelm large regions of the country. And that's what's sort of being projected by most of the major modelers right now. Now, there are better scenarios when you use a lot of masks, and we say 90% mask rate would then reduce that to 3,500 a day, and that would, again, you know, reduce your capacity push. But this is what a lot of people are looking at right now, unfortunately. Now you can see, if we're able to if we actually have an effective vaccine, you could actually start to, you know, impact and push that curve back down again, especially if you give it to the healthcare workers on the front line, give it to some of the military, and then especially in April, May, if you've demonstrated effectiveness and safety for the susceptible populations, you know, over 65s, especially over 70s, at that point you could really start to flatten the curve and push it actually down. And you can get a sense of how many doses we could actually, if you look at the doses we've got and we're projecting, now these are hopeful projections, frankly, we could actually vaccinate the 50% of Americans who seem to want an early vaccine and be vaccinated by it by the end of the year or so, and without actually affecting, you know, too much overall capacity of the world. And it would kind of it would cost quite a bit, but it's obviously worth it compared to, you know, $100 billion a month that it's costing us right now.
Let me ask you a couple questions. Did you factor in the seasonal flu into this, or is this just COVID?
This is just COVID. You throw in seasonal flu, and you get into huge problems. Yeah, it's actually 200,000 hospital beds a month.
And then on these 4 main ones, eventually, you know, they're all going to come up with something, whether it works or not. Do they then continue forward? I mean, we're not going to have one universal vaccine. We're still going to have multiple vaccines, right?
Oh, yes, we'll have multiple vaccines. We'll need it for the capacity, and we'll also need it because these aren't going to be that effective initially, I don't believe. Let's take a look at that. The downside of doing EUAs this early, and frankly, a little bit in a novel way, which we've never used before, you know, is that you can see that you know, here are the global gambits, right? China is started this. They're doing military inoculations with almost no data starting in June already, and that's sort of a phase. They're doing a phase 3 equivalent in their military, and they're having a lot of adverse events. The Russia approved Sputnik 5. That was a pretty innocuous adenovirus vector. vaccine based on cold antigens, and so they put this into practice before they even tested 100 people in phase 2. So there's sort of a, sadly, there's sort of an escalation here that's occurring, that the U.S. could fall into a trap of doing an interim evaluation of about 120,000 phase 3 subjects, and of that you might have 30,000 total, showing some effect, or waiting. And I can just imagine sort of, we're almost there. Well, we'll just give it a little bit more chance. Don't worry about the fact a lot of people are dying, or that we're not doing, we're not wearing masks effectively or whatever. Just wait for the vaccine, and that can really cause a lot of challenges. And the Lancet actually came out. That's the major British medical journal, and it said there is a danger. You can see the quote: "There is a danger that a political and economic pressures for rapid introduction of a COVID-19 vaccine could lead to widespread deployment of a vaccine that is in reality only weakly effective, perhaps because of misleading promising result from an underpowered trial." Underpowered, they mean not enough patients were tested, and all of a sudden they came to a conclusion that wasn't accurate. There are a lot of issues that as a drug developer you worry about when you have an acceleration of underpowered, what could be underpowered studies. And these, I listed some of them. I'm sure I'm missing some, but the first is that you could sort of get bar muscles, right? You could say, oh, I have vaccinated now, let's go out and have fun. And if the vaccine doesn't work, then you actually accelerate the spread of that vaccine. The other thing is, of course, you start diverting, because you think you have a good vaccine, you invest a lot of money in the manufacturing scale up and so on, and you start diverting all of your attention from things that actually work better in the long run, and you lose out. And of course, the third issue is right away you lose all your patients, right? Because as soon as you give a person an option, you can use this approved vaccine, or you can and have 100% chance of getting that vaccine, or I can put you as part of a trial, and there's only a 50% chance you're going to get the real stuff, and a 50% chance you're going to get saline solution. Everyone in that situation, especially if they're feeling susceptible, is going to take the vaccine, not the saline. Like I said, they're not going to enroll patients for tests anymore. Of course, there's a lot of opportunity for adverse events, which we're seeing in China. All right, as you pointed out, Matt, there's a huge erosion of public trust if you move too fast, and that doesn't even make sense to people to go that fast. And there's a whole bunch of other issues that you've got that we can. What it turns out is you have a vaccine in place, and then you have to compare all the other vaccines to it, and suppose it's 20% effective. All of a sudden, you're having to compare your better vaccines with something that's sort of weak, but it forces you to do an awful lot more testing, right? You can imagine trying to get that separation. It won't take 30,000 people; it'll take 100,000 people, and it delays everybody else, all the other perhaps better vaccine manufacturers in their trials, and it costs a lot more. And of course, there's huge socioeconomic and political disruptions when you have to pick winners and losers, saying, okay, we're going to take your vaccine, but not your vaccine. We're going to take this person to be vaccinated, but not that person to be vaccinated, and so on. There's going to be a lot of difficulty with that. And the faster you try to implement something like that, the more difficult and harsh the dislocations are. And of course, it's just exhausting, right? I mean, it's just very, very tiring to go through all these hype cycles all the time. And people are sort of staying up at night worrying whether the vaccine is going to work or not. So overall, what I think is going to happen, this is not a prediction, it's just a scenario of what is possible. If everything works brilliantly and continues to work brilliantly for the vaccine manufacturers, and everything goes perfectly all the way through, which so far, frankly, it's vastly exceeded my expectations. I thought they'd just be getting into phase 3 clinical trials now, and they were already in phase 3 clinical trials a month ago, and they've already enrolled over 25,000 patients in those phase 3 trials. That is shockingly fast. So you can get a sense of this is what could be. The real risk, as the Lancet said, is that we offer something up that doesn't work very well. And here's my sense of the other issues that are here. The first question is it, can we reduce transmission? And my sense of this is that, we can probably reduce transmission by having a vaccine that works somewhat by 50 to 60%. Can it protect against severe disease? Well, unfortunately, none of these trials actually look at disease. at long-term disease. So we aren't actually going to be able to tell that. But my sense of this is that it could, and eventually we may find out that it does after, that most of these trials will go for 2 years. We may find significant reduction in severe long-term effects, especially in the elderly. How safe is it? I think it's probably going to be safe for the young, but not so safe for the compromised who are dying. Is it going to be durable? I don't think so. I think the titer levels are going to show that we're going to have trouble when you extrapolate the titer levels that were projected and that were actually published in phase 1, 2, and you have to take it's kind of challenging because it's not a linear slope reduction, but it's actually a logarithmic slope reduction in durability and titer levels. I think it's kind of 9 months to a year. And I decided to be conservative in this case because this is actually the thing we're most sensitive to and actually getting to herd immunity is how durable it is. So you want to be more conservative there. And finally, scalability, how many doses will we have? And I think, there's a good chance we'll have 100 million doses plus. So overall, in the first generation, my sense was that we would be at about a 30% overall effectiveness rate for the first generation. And I think that if we go through a normal progression of the FDA, kind of evaluation and a normal working of the number of patients and all the hiccups that occur with that, we'll probably have that first solution in, July of next year for the general public, possibly a little bit earlier if we do EUA for some of the more important populations that get things in advance, like healthcare workers and first line people.
Now, one of the things I read about the Spanish flu of 100 years ago was it went away in part because it mutated into a more flu-like, like the normal flu that we have. Do you think there's any chance that this the COVID will mutate into something easier to handle, I guess? I'm not sure what word to use, right?
Well, there were two effects. We're not sure which one was most important. The first one was it did mutate and did sort of get to be a little bit less virulent. And don't forget, our best estimates right now with the flu versus COVID is that COVID is about 100 times less mutable than the flu virus. So the mutation rate of COVID is around 1 times 10 to the 6th, 10 to the minus 6th, and for flu it's 1 times 10 to the minus 4th in terms of number of generations and so on. So it's about 100 times, our best estimates right now, about 100 times less mutation friendly. And that's because of the biology. The first issue is the flu virus has actually 4 DNA chains to mutate, and it mutates randomly within generations. Versus COVID only has 1. And the second is that COVID actually has an editor, which actually looks at every reproduction and looks and says, yes, this one is correct and this one isn't. Flu does not have an editor. So those two things cause it to be a lot less mutable. The other big factor in Spanish flu was we let it go so long that we actually got some herd immunity to it.
Yeah. Okay. We only got about a minute left.
What do you guys think? Was it interesting, or you think?
Yeah, I think that's fascinating. I mean, it's bleak as hell, but it's really interesting. I mean, 5,000-6,000 people a day bumping up against hospital capacity again, and not just in hotspots, but everywhere. That's not going to be a fun winter.
No, it's really worrisome. We're worried about the countryside, especially people. The healthcare systems are more fragile out in the country.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we're going to have to leave all this good news for now.
Well, it's good to see you guys. Let me know what you guys. I'm happy to take any time.
I'm going to go home and seal myself up in bubble wrap now.
David's always much more positive than I am.
We'll all head over to Dave Phillips' bar and just drink heavily, right? So.
I'll let you know how it goes on Wednesday. That's the big discussion with the peer review guys. So we'll talk soon.
All right. Thanks very much, Fred Brown.
Thanks.
Once again, that's epidemiologist and infectious disease expert Fred Brown, a regular here on the TechCast. For right now, this is Matt Roush.
And Mike Brennan.
And we'll be right back with another segment in just a minute.
As a Lawrence Technological
Is Richard there, Dave?
You're not only marketable, you're worth more. Yes, more. According to payscale.com, when it comes to graduate salaries, LTU is in America's top 100. Be invaluable. Be more. At LTU, possible is everything.
Salaries of Lawrence.
Or if you can't scare us today, we just did a half hour with Dr. Doom there, so
On a campus visit, meet with counselors, faculty.
Was it bad?
Why wait? Find out more at ltu.edu.
Lawrence Technological University graduates earn a degree and a higher starting salary. In fact, when it comes to earning potential, the Brookings Institution ranks LTU 5th among U.S. colleges and universities. Be enriched. Be more. At LTU, possible is everything.
Salaries of Lawrence Tech grads are among the highest of any university in America. Plan a campus visit to meet with counselors, faculty, and coaches. Why wait? Find out more at ltu.edu.
hey, it's Matt Roush.
And Mike Brennan.
And calling us from the library right now, it looks like, is Richard Steenan, our esteemed cybersecurity expert. We haven't had you on in a while because we've been having so much fun getting scared by who I affectionately call Dr. Doom, Fred Brown, the epidemiologist, talking about COVID. But I understand there are some fresh insights into cybersecurity and the bad guys that you're going to have for us today.
Yeah, great to see you guys. So I've been all summer long, I've been talking to companies in this space called threat intelligence, or sometimes I'm calling it cyber threat intelligence because it's different than what spy agencies do about terrorists and what have you. So these guys, most of them mine something called the deep and dark web. So these are all the Tor sites, the Onion routing network. Which is kind of anonymous, and they all set up these anonymous sites, and only they know where they are. And on them is where they say, hey, I got a batch of 1 million credit cards, and they'll like sell you a sample or give you a sample so you validate that they're still alive. And that's sometimes when you see a penny charged to your credit card, that's the cyber thieves checking to see if it's still active. But within 24 hours of that, there's going to be some huge charges, or your bank account will be empty. So these guys have spent the last 10, 15 years infiltrating those networks, posing as bad guys. And then they just hook up a computer to read all of the chats on the entire forum all the time and put them in a big database. And then you, as a customer of threat intelligence, get access to that database, and you would say, well, let's see if anybody's checked our, the 4-digit of our bank credit card. And it'll say, yeah, all these forums are talking about this big breach that you had that you might not have known about. Or you can check, is anybody in the underworld planning on kidnapping the CEO's kids? And you can find that out too. So that's the threat intelligence space. So I've just spent all the time putting that together, just finished it today. And I can report in the industry, there are 66 vendors that provide services like this, all the different parts of it. And there are 4,600 employees at those vendors. And since the beginning of the year, first they grew by 5%. But then they've lost 2% since COVID hit. So there's, confirming the suspicion that COVID is having an impact even on things like the security industry.
So, and you've just, is this report that you've been working on, are you getting ready to release that?
Yeah. So I'll publish most of the findings on Forbes, and then I'll actually sell the report to, investors and consumers of big enterprise IT solutions that will want to know all those vendors. And along with the written report, my analysis, they'll get the spreadsheet that I use to track all this data. And then, first time ever, I'm going to update it every quarter because I get new data every quarter on the number of employees. So I can estimate who's growing and who's failing to grow. And I track all the investments that happen and the mergers and acquisitions that happen too.
Okay, when is this going to be released? Well, it's September is tomorrow. So what, in September or when?
In September, in September. Pretty much in time for it'll be for the first half. The report covers the first half of 2020, and then I'm already starting the research for the third quarter, and then we'll have, basically every quarter we'll release a new report.
So where can people go to get this report?
Yeah, you just go to it-harvest.com.
And then I asked this question. I'm sure there's a cost involved. What are you charging for something like this?
Yeah. So what bugged me whenever you search on what's the market size for X, you eventually almost immediately get to one of these market research companies, which I figured out they're all pretty much the same company with different names based in India, and they're all fake. So when they launched the availability of their report for $10,000, they just do some Google searches, assemble something that they can put into their PDF template, and they'll send you a redacted version as an example. And then after you pay them $10,000, they kick off their researchers to fill in the blanks. So this is the opposite of that. So I'll charge $1,500 for a copy of the report, and then $5,000 for annual subscription to the report.
And you won't run off to India or anything like that, right?
So I do use India for research. So every quarter I've got to go through 3,000 vendors, check out how many employees of the vendors are on LinkedIn. And I can't do that in even a quarter. I couldn't do it myself. So I turn it over to my guy in India. He's got a team. They turn it around in 2 or 3 days.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
You also wanted to talk about Elon Musk's pig.
Yeah. Gertrude, right?
Yes.
Who is going to be one of the most famous pigs since Babe. So on Friday, I think it was, Elon Musk had the biggest reveal ever, right? So kind of mimicking what he did with Tesla a year before when he was revealing that they were ready to go to the self-driving car at the push of a button. This was just as exciting. He's built something called Neuralink, which he describes as a Fitbit inserted in your brain with lots of thin wires. And they basically use a robot that opens up your head, drills a hole in your skull, implants, hundreds of wires now, but eventually tens of thousands of wires that can read and write to your brain neurons. And then they close it all up, and it's an inpatient surgery. He showed off the robot that does that. He wants to get it down to several $1,000s in order to do this operation and install it. And then they think that they will be able to read impulses and then create impulses in your brain. And the first application is going to be people with cerebral palsy or quadriplegics, or people who have had spinal injuries. And the spinal injury one is cool because we know he can read the thoughts that initiate the motion of a muscle. So they'll put another one lower below the break in your spinal cord, and through Bluetooth basically communicate with it and communicate your desire to move your legs to your legs. It's pretty exciting. And of course people
bypassing the spinal cord injury that makes you unable to move your legs.
Right. He's treating it like a wired bypass, a tap and then another tap to bypass it. It's very cool.
So we're going to be the future people will be cyborgs or something then, is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. This will be there are people that they can do that with now, right? This is a research thing that's been around for decades. But as usual, Elon Musk takes the basic research and he imagines what it could mean for the future, and then he tries to build it. And he's been pretty successful building a space company out of nothing. When people have been talking about how to do it for decades as well. My
first thought in the what could possibly go wrong department is if they can put impulses, if they could make, if they could send content to your brain as well as you being able to use these wires, somebody could, essentially hack your brain. I mean,
yep.
And make you do something you don't want to do. I was just flashing in my mind on the Reggie Jackson scene from the Naked Gun movie where he's like, I must kill the queen.
Yep. Yep. Completely. That's what all those science fiction stories will be about. There were a bunch of people that asked about security, right? Because this is, he did a live Q&A over Twitter. Yeah. They used the right words to describe, containment and multiple layers and all the rest. But I still didn't feel comfortable because the concept is that the all of the thinking will be for the new device will be done in your cell phone, and you'll communicate with your cell phone. And I don't think that's going to work. I think you need something different than the device that's getting hacked all the time in order to have such critical information and abilities. But that's okay. You have a separate cell phone, because you do have to access the internet. Somebody asked him, will I be able to call my Tesla to come to my front door? And he said, absolutely, yes. One of the engineers said he was on the program because he wanted to see telepathy, so you would direct human-to-human transmission of your thoughts without having to formulate words. We'll see how that goes.
Well, that's not always a good idea, I can tell you.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. You definitely want to be able to turn that on and off.
Yeah. Somebody with Tourette's syndrome would be in real trouble, right? So,
that's for sure. That's for sure. But they could probably cure Tourette's. That's any neurological disorder, blindness. Replace your eyes with cameras. Deafness, give you the ability.
Yeah,
to
I saw some stuff about depression and anxiety, which is rampant these days. So
yeah. Yep. Depression, anxiety. They mentioned. Those things that are neurological, right? Not sometimes you should be depressed because things are pretty bad. It just goes on and on when so it's brand new world. If he takes a company public, definitely buy it before it gets to the point where it has to split 4 or 5 to 1 like Tesla did today.
Yeah, no kidding.
A brave new world. You also wanted to talk about the chief security officer for Uber.
Yeah, so last week we saw the Justice Department and the state, I don't know if it's the Attorney General, filed criminal charges against the former chief security officer at Uber. And that is just the world I live in is just in an uproar. Nobody knows what to think of this. This is a first on many, many levels, but first time that a chief security officer has been held both personally liable for a breach or the repercussions of a breach and criminally liable. So this person, Joe Sullivan, who's currently the chief information security officer for Cloudflare, the company we all know because yesterday Cloudflare went down along with Level 3 and CenturyLink. But Cloudflare is controversial in its own way. But now their CISO is under indictment for criminal charges while he was at Uber. He's also an attorney, former Justice Department prosecutor, got his way into the cybersecurity world and ended up at Uber, which, not all of us trust Uber to play fairly in the marketplace. And they had a massive breach in 2014. So the FTC, doing what the FTC does, was investigating to see if they had taken proper measures post breach in order to protect their drivers and customers' data. While the FTC was investigating, they had another breach in 2016. And they're accusing Joe Sullivan of not revealing that to them and taking actions to prevent them from learning of it. So basically, he was covering up knowledge of a felony. To make things worse, he paid the hackers $100,000 to not tell anybody about the breach. So
it's always it's the cover-up that always is worse than the crime, right?
Well, you've got all the evidence of the cover-up. The crime's a little harder to prove.
Right.
But if you lie and cover up information, they'll be after you. So
we're going to have to leave it at that. That 15 minutes blew right by. So if I'll take a look at your research report or check you out, how do they do that, Richard?
Yeah, you can always find me on Twitter at Cyberwar, where I make sure everybody knows about anything that I'm doing.
All right, Richard Steenan of IT Harvest. Thanks for being with us today.
Thanks, Matt. Thanks, Mike.
And we'll be right back with another segment of the M2Techcast in just a moment.
What do you get at Lawrence Technological University? Everything. Great labs and studios, supportive professors,
You bet.
plus
See
a
you.
full campus life, NAIA athletics, and all the software you need to succeed. Be smart. Be more.
Somebody knocked at my door while we were
Possible
in the
is
middle of that segment.
All right,
Someone
yeah,
see if
sure.
they
I'll
wanted
do
to
that.
go on.
Go ahead.
Tech grads are among the highest of any university in America. Plan a campus visit to meet with counselors, faculty, and coaches. Why wait? Find out more at ltu.edu.
As a Lawrence Technological University graduate,
Mike,
you're
we
not
got 15
marketable.
minutes.
You're worth more. Yes,
Right.
more. According to PayScale.com, when it comes to graduate salaries, LTU is in America's top 100. Be invaluable. Be more. At LTU, possible is everything.
Salaries of Lawrence Tech grads are among the
How's it
highest
going,
of
sir?
any university in America. Plan a campus visit to meet with counselors, faculty, and coaches. Why wait? Find out more at ltu.edu.
Hey, it's Matt Roush.
And Mike Brennan.
And we're back with another segment of the M2Techcast with a fellow Mike and I have both known for a good long while now. He is sort of the dean of angel investing in Michigan, David Weaver. So welcome to the show, Dave.
Thank you, Matt.
You've been identified many ways. I don't know about Dean of the Angel Investors. That's the first, but I like that actually. So,
Or the grandfather of
the
Angel.
grandfather of the of the Angels. Let's start off with. I'm assuming most people that watch this show know what an angel investor is, but just in case, why don't you explain what an angel investor is?
Yeah, these are individuals that have the net worth of at least $1 million plus, excluding the cost of their own personal home property, or annual income of at least 200K in the last 3 years, repeating, or with their spouse of 300K a year type of thing, income.
So
it's either
somebody like
income
Matt
driven
Roush then,
or
right?
assets. Sorry?
Somebody like Matt Roush then, right? So
There you go.
yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
You think far too highly of my investing acumen, I can tell you that right now.
So David is, gosh, he was the Great Lake Angels, and then you teamed up with Duran, and you formed Cityside Angels, and then I just saw you sent me a week or two ago a report for Birmingham Angels. So are all three of these groups active or what?
Yeah, Great Lakes Angels is evolving into being a fund, $10 million angel fund in that same space where you do pre-seed and seed level investing. Great Lakes Angels was the first group in the state 2002, charter member of the Michigan Venture Capital Association and the Angel Capital Association, which is global now in the way of that, and all angel investing, early stage pre-VC investing, okay? So we put that on the table. We'll start fundraising probably later in September. Pick that up again. We put it on hold because we had a lot of folks who are interested in doing their deals rather than being in a fund. So we started Birmingham Angels based here in Oakland County, but servicing all Southeast Michigan, and investors from all over the state are joining, and some folks from New York, New Jersey even. But that is a group where we have individual checks written by the investors themselves into deals they see, and we bring to them. Used to be in face-to-face at our office above Walgreens in Birmingham there next to Papa Joe's. And now they're virtual Zoom meetings, but we're still seeing a lot of deals. And we started the group in last summer, and then had our first meeting September, October, November at the offices there, and ran January, February, and March. And so, and then when the report we did was through June, of that period of time, just 9 meetings, we had 10 companies get funded out of 30 presenting. 10 out of 30, that's like 33 1/3%, if you can do the math.
Yeah, it's pretty
high for that. And I think by the time we get done with September, we're gonna be above that. We've got 4 deals in play right now, and probably closing on 3 of those before the middle of September. So we're very fortunate. We have angels that are not sitting on their hands when they see a deal they like, and we work real hard to pick them good deals. And it shows that because they're investing in them. So we're getting funding. It's close to 900K in 9 months of deals, so we're anxious for more deals and more investors.
Okay,
so what sectors are the hottest right now? I know back when we first met, it was mostly either IT services, software, or life sciences. Are those still sort of the big 3?
Yeah, we've got We're very eclectic. We're deal driven, not sector driven so much. But what's really hot is wearable technology. And we're seeing a lot of medical device companies coming in right now, solving COVID type issues, but also reducing costs for the hospital. You can't put something in the market anymore unless you knock out costs someplace to embrace it. So the 6 months there, we had 4 medical device deals, 2 SaaS deals, 1 wearable, 2 B2B, and 1 B2B2C type of thing deal. And the 4 in play right now, another B2B, 2 medical, and 1 more SaaS. So we're all over the map on this. We just want to find something that looks like it's going to have a relatively short exit and not need that much in the way of millions of dollars to follow to get to market and get acquired.
And just to translate what he said, B2B is business to business, SaaS is software as a service, B2C is business to consumer. I'm assuming this audience is up to these things, but there may be folks that didn't quite understand what you were talking about.
Yeah, no, it's going to break that down. Thanks, Mike. I appreciate it. Yeah, and I think we're very fortunate that the investors who signed up, are willing to part with their money when they see something they get very passionate about. And it's not a gut feel, it's stats. And one of the things we do is one of our secrets for getting things done so fast, and most of the deals we've done are done in less than 60 days from the time they pitch, which is remarkable. I've been raising money as a CEO myself before, and it's like 3-6 months to then get a no. If it's yes, then it drags out to get the term sheets done, So we if it's a no, they find out early. If it's a yes, we move quickly. And one of our biggest secrets is the software we have that Dorian helped get started a couple of years ago called SidePitch. So anyone listening out there, if you're an entrepreneur looking to raise capital, I don't care whether you're in Michigan or not, sidepitch.com is a place to put your deal, because more and more investors are signing up to look for deals and can be seen and visible by a lot of folks.
How is that spelled?
SIDEPITCH, SidePitch, all one word. .com. And it's a great platform because everything's transparent for the investors. They can see all the due diligence, everything the company puts on there, including a gap table, which oftentimes is something that investors want to see, and companies don't think of putting that in there. We want to know who's in the deal, money-wise and debt-wise. We want to know all that. It helps us make a decision much faster, move forward. So we're hoping to maybe get the fund launched this fall. And SidePitch is great. We'd like to make it available to all the investors, individuals, and groups in the state of Michigan. So we have one platform that we can have everybody on and share the due diligence, everything, and find everything there. Like right now, when we have companies that I want to syndicate after our money's in them, I can send a link to their deal to another investor or investor group in Michigan or elsewhere and say, here's the deal. You can read everything the company's put in. You don't have to. Company doesn't have to go and add everything all over again to another place. They can forward all the information, make it real quick for the next person or an entity to make a decision on it.
Okay. So what else can we talk about here now? You gave me a long list of things you wanted to discuss. So what would you like to talk about next?
Well, I think to end on a good note for today's session is that the good thing is that there are investors that are out there seeing money sitting on the sideline that's not going to go in the market with the volatility right now. They're looking for something where they can park that money, know that's in companies that are normally 2 years, sometimes plus, before they really get in the market. So all the nonsense that's going on in the market right now is not really affecting these companies. They're not in that space yet. By the time they get in there, things will change and they'll have solutions that are still going to be valid at that time. So it makes a good sense to put your money over there with these companies and wait 3 to 5 years for an exit. The goal is obviously to have 3 to 5x return or better on your money. But there's a lot of excitement. We're even seeing deals. We're focused on Michigan, but we've got deals. I got one in the queue from California. Dorian and I look at deals coming from Israel. A lot of good technology there. There's more VCs in Israel than anywhere in the country except Germany and the US. Because all the deal flow coming out of there is just incredible. We want a piece of that.
Yeah, Israel, I know, is really big on cybersecurity, and I believe healthcare is another big area for them, right?
And agri-tech is also one of the specialties we like, and they're very strong in that because they're living in a desert. They learn to do marvelous things with plants and plant-based technology.
Yeah, yeah. I was.
Is there much going on in Michigan in terms of renewable energy, clean energy deals?
I don't know about that. We normally have not seen those deals, and I'm not sure we're anxious to see those kind of clean energy deals either. They're a long play and normally lots of money. So we're staying away from those. We are, let's see, we are doing some deals in, I already mentioned wearable. Occasionally we get some ending like consumer type deals. Like we invested in a company that I'm sure you heard of called, I'm pulling a blank on it right now. It's on the music market right now, and it's getting a lot of good traction on it. Boy,
well, we'll pass on that for now. So let's talk a little bit about if someone's interested in joining your group. You've already told them that they have to have a high net worth,
right.
But I'm sure there's other things they have to do. I think they have to make I know what it was before. You have to make an annual commitment of money.
Yes, most of the groups have a membership fee to be in the group, and the membership fee in us gives them access to Side Pitch with no extra charge, but there is a fee, and we typically will have 10 events a year that they can attend, some hopefully in person in the future, or at least virtual right now, and get to meet other investors. And also, a good part of our deal flow is coming from our investors that have their ears to the ground and run across things out there. It's quite often we'll get at least one or two more events, deal flow from our own investor groups, which are great, and syndicate with other groups around the state. Some of the companies we invest in were passed to us from another group and vice versa.
So in a typical deal, it could be 4 or 5 angel investors, could be different groups, could be 2 to 250,000, could be more, could be less, but in that ballpark, right?
Most of the deals we're looking at are asking for either 250 up to $1.5 million, maybe 2 million. And most of the companies are pre-revenue or right at the cusp of beginning of revenue. If they're coming to us for a $5 million deal, we will not touch that. That's
a venture capital deal then, right?
Well, it better have most of the deal done. Because we don't come in with 250 or 500, a $5 million deal and wait and see how long it takes to raise the rest of the $4.5 million. You know, that's a stretch and too much risk. It's already risky being a company pre-revenue. But yeah, we're looking for deals.
What's your website? How can people get more information on what you're doing?
Well, Birmingham Angels is under the website of Cityside Ventures, which is really the management for Birmingham Angels. We provide the back room and the management of Birmingham Angels. We're not doing funding into Cityside Ventures per se, even though we have some companies in their portfolio over there before I joined them. But Birmingham Angels is what we're managing, and then we'll be managing the fund when that gets launched for Great Lakes Angels as well. But so they would look citysideventures.com.
And like everybody else these days, no in-person meetings, but you can participate virtually, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And by our Birmingham Angel meetings are by invitation only, but every month we also conduct a couple educational seminars, one on introduction to angel investing for high net worth folks that like to learn what this is before they try and stick their toes in the water. Sign up for one of those or reach out to me and I'll send you an invite. The other one's an introduction to Birmingham Angels to learn a little more about the group itself. But those are webinars or Zoom meetings we conduct as well with Q&A.
Okay, sounds great. David Weaver, man with many hats, but right now you can reach him through Cityside Ventures or Cityside Angels?
Cityside Ventures.
Ventures.com. Okay, sounds great.
All right, thank you, David, and thanks to our other guest today, Richard Steenan, and our very own in-house epidemiologist, Fred Brown. Interesting show today, Mike. There's some scary stuff and some hopeful stuff here.
Well, we try to have a nice blend because lately we've just been scaring the pants off everybody, right? So I want to be a bit hopeful here, right?
All right.
There's hope for startups. People are still looking at them and funding them. So that's always
Yeah.
encouraging.
That's a great thing.
All right.
All right, thanks. We'll be back
Thank you.
next Monday at 2 p.m. Eastern time. For right now, this is Matt Roush.
And Mike Brennan.
And you've been watching the M2Techcast, mitechnews.tv.
All right, thanks, Dave.
Yeah, thank you guys. Appreciate it.
All right, talk to you later.
You're
You bet.
listening to M2 Techcast, a live internet radio show
Hey, Mike.
offering the latest news
Yeah.
and reviews.
As far as I'm concerned, you can just, when you edit David's piece down, we should just basically trim out that whole part where I asked him the question about renewable energy and his brain kind of stalled there for a second.
Yeah, I was planning on doing. That's why
Yeah.
I wanted to get him off that because we were just dead air in there for a while.
Yeah, okay, yeah, just, that's about 45 seconds. You can just, okay,
Yeah, cut that out. So,
all right,
okay, talk to you later.
Pretend it never happened.
yes. We'll fix it in post, right?
Exactly.
Talk to you later.
Yeah.